Good evening, and welcome to Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. I'm your host, Brandon-Shea Mutala, and joining me, as always, is my ever-constant shrunken head co-host, Chris Haigh.
I love that. I'm just going to be like Chris Shrunken Head Haigh. I love it. Hi.
How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I am okay. I think, like all of us, we are just we're getting by. We're getting by. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. I keep noticing, though, I do have this Canadian pronunciation of your last name. I say Haigh, but it's Haigh. I keep pronouncing it wrong. Yeah. It's close. It's just like the length
at this
of the
stage,
vowel.
I don't even notice it. Like, I noticed it, I think, a few episodes ago, and then I was like, I'm just fine with it at this stage. People always get it wrong, and I don't. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
Well, at least I'm close. I mean, when we started the podcast, it was Chris A-hole, and I'm like, I just couldn't get around that one.
I nearly swore then. I nearly swore, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But no, I've had Haigh, huge, but that's only for certain people. No, honestly, I mean, you must have it with, because
That's like a wrestling name, Chris Huge Haigh.
Well, no, because I'm quite a big guy as well. It's kind of hilarious because like, oh, it's like Huge Haigh, and I'm like, I'm sensitive, and I just beat them. No, but I had it with your surname because I was like, is it Mutala or Mutala or something else? So it's a similar thing.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same where it's like, whatever. Mutala,
Nutella.
I get it all.
Yeah.
Nutella,
yeah.
Chocolatey hazelnut. People call me that sometimes too. I'm concerned that we're going off on this tangent because I think it means we're trying to delay the discussion of the film today, Chris.
This always happens. Where they're like, oh, do you know what? Let's create some like comedy names, and we're just like, yeah, the people who will listen to this actually want to know our opinion on the film, and we're like,
do they?
Sure? But are you sure?
Chris, I got to tell you something. So Under Capricorn was my last Hitchcock blind spot, and I know this for sure. This was the last Hitchcock film I hadn't seen, and I'm so depressed that this was the last Hitchcock movie that I'd ever seen.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
This was... Yeah, so I'm like, there was always that one nugget out there that I hadn't seen, and it turned out to be a nugget of turd.
It was like... You thought from a distance it was a beautiful diamond, and then upon close inspection, it was a piece of glass.
It wasn't even coal. It was turd.
It wasn't even coal. It wasn't a coal. It was a turd. Well, I mean, if this is how the rest of the show is going to go, I'm feeling quite optimistic.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah, because I realized that, like, with my kids now, I'm just going to be like, you know, when they're like, you've been naughty, Santa's going to bring you a copy of Under Capricorn for Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I've realised the irony as well of us two being on. I believe we're both the only Capricorns on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because you're a January... Excellent. I will give you a birthday, but it's like mid-January.
17.
Yeah, well, it's
I'm a Capricorn.
Same date as one of my best friends, and I'm a January 20th, so we are both Capricorns, and I was so excited based on the title alone for this film. I was there like, oh, it's going to be like a thriller, or it's going to be like some kind of thing. It wasn't.
Some type of, what do they call it? The cosmology. What do they call it when they... Horoscope.
Yeah.
Horoscope thriller. So my only thought that I could come up with was that Under Capricorn had to do with the Tropic of Capricorn. Like, I don't know which one is which, but I'm guessing that Capricorn, the Tropic of Capricorn, would be the south one. Am I right on that one?
Oh, I'm trying to remember my basic geography. I would, from when I remember seeing it, I thought it went... It might be. So there's a tropic on either side of the equator, and I believe Cancer is the one that is north.
And that's where we get our spring and...
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Tropic of Capricorn is the southern one. So
Cancer's the northern.
this Australia is below the Tropic of Capricorn, and that's where they get like where he is in Melbourne is below the Tropic of Capricorn, which is a weird title for the film, I think.
It's a weird title, and then I'll be honest. After I watched the film, I kind of went on Wikipedia because I'm like, I just need to double check some stuff with this plot. And they were like, oh, under Capricorn, it's also because Capricorn is and it came up with some random nonsense where it was like, oh, well, Capricorn's the sign of, sexual desire. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Oh, no, because Capricorn, the sign is a goat, and a goat represents sexual desire. And I'm like, oh, yeah, everyone knows the famous, the Rassic-like goats.
The horned beast.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, I guess, sure. Okay. So we're into the sexy film. The sexy Hitchcock films. Okay. Awesome. Well, do you want to... You got to... Oh, Tom's not here.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, Tom. Sorry.
We just wanted to jump into ragging on this film that we forgot that one of our co-hosts isn't here this week. Tom's away, but he should be back with us next time when we cover, what is it, Stage Fright's next, I think it is.
Yes.
So, which will be a fun one. Back to black and white next time too. So,
yeah.
But Tom, Chris, did you have a summary?
I have a summary,
first?
and it's a mysterious summary as well. There are poison and passion in 18th century Australia as a young man is shocked to find that his genteel cousin, married to a tough ex-con who has found wealth in the penal colony, has taken to the bottle. His efforts to restore her spirits turn into more tender affections, but the actions of a malevolent housekeeper spark a chain of events that climax with a shocking revelation. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, well, let's fill out this discussion with a little bit of trivia. I actually got quite a bit here, so let's jump into here. Under Capricorn is a 1949 British historical thriller film directed by Hitchcock about a couple in Australia who started out as a lady and stable boy in Ireland and who are now bound together by a horrible secret. The film is based on the play by John Colton and Margaret Linden, which in turn is based on the novel Under Capricorn from 1937 by Helen Simpson. The screenplay was written by James Bridie from an adaptation by Hume Cronyn. And we saw Hume Cronyn in Lifeboat, and he also worked on, I believe it was Rope that he worked on. So this is Hitchcock's second film in Technicolor, and like the preceding color film Rope, also featured 9 and 10 minute long takes. Now, I really, really thought that the long takes were cool. So this is kind of one of the things that's conflicted me about this film, is there were some really neat sequences where this camera was moving all over the place. What did you notice the long takes in this film when you were watching, Chris?
I noticed a few. I mean, I had to notice something because the plot did not keep me going. Mm-hmm. But the annoying thing is that a lot of it is done quite well. So there's the scene where I've even forgotten a name. Henrietta is introduced, and there's this incredibly tense long shot that follows her progression from sort of the head of the table with her husband, and just tracks around all the way around the guests and catching their reactions and all that sort of thing. And I thought it's such a cool way to introduce a character who we've only heard of, and she is arguably the most important character in the film. And yeah, I thought it was quite a cool one. And Hitch has a sort of history of these really cool long tracking shots. But yeah, I thought they were quite interesting and quite well done. They were one of the few redeeming points of the film.
Yeah. See, you know what's interesting is that I completely forgot that Ingrid Bergman was in this film until she showed up on screen.
Yeah.
You know, I knew she was in it, right? Because we'd been talking about this, but when I'm watching the movie, I completely forgot that she was going to be in this, because it's quite a bit into the movie before she's introduced, and she's such a celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works though, because it tries to set it up. It's different to a Hitchcock movie in the sense of it's not an immediate thriller. It's not like a murder mystery. It's more of a sort of romantic suspense thriller. And normally you would lead with the heroine. If it was a book, you would lead with Henrietta, and it would be a case of like, oh, okay, you know, here's all the mysterious things happening, and it's the arrival of her cousin that brings all this in. But no, to introduce her, it's about 25-30 minutes in, I think. Because when
that sounds about right.
He goes that he's befriended her husband, and he goes to the house and everything, and he realizes, oh, actually, we already know each other from a previous life. So yeah, it's an interesting choice. I just really wish the film had been more interesting.
Mm-hmm. So Wikipedia lists the film as having a runtime of 117 minutes. Now, I'm pretty sure that's a typo on my end, because I think it was closer to 1,017 minutes.
117
and
hours.
was direct and was released on September 8th of 1949. The film was co-produced by Hitchcock and Sidney Bernstein for their short-lived production company Transatlantic Pictures, and was released through Warner Brothers. In Truffaut Hitchcock told Francois Truffaut that Under Capricorn was such a failure that Bankers Trust Company, which had financed the film, repossessed the film, which was then unavailable until the first U.S. network television screening in 1968. In the Truffaut interview, Hitchcock also mentioned the New York Times reviewer, who wrote that the viewer had to wait almost 100 minutes for the first suspenseful moment. And I think it was actually closer to 1,000 minutes that you had to wait for that first suspenseful moment. According to Warner's records, the film earned $1.21 million domestically and $1.46 million in foreign territories, but it had a budget of around $3 million, so it lost money. It is thought that the audience had imagined Under Capricorn was going to be a thriller, which it was not. The plot was a domestic love triangle with a few thriller elements thrown in, and this ultimately led to its box office failure. However, the public reception of the film may have been damaged by the revelation in 1949 of the married Bergman's adulterous relationship with and subsequent pregnancy by the married Italian film director Roberto Rossellini. The film was not well received by critics. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times wrote that it seems that neither Miss Bergman nor Mr. Hitchcock has tangled here with stuff of any better than penny dreadful substance and superficial demands. Variety called it overlong and talky with scant measure of the Hitchcock thriller tricks that could have sharpened general reception. While John McCartan of the New Yorker, wrote that this picture simultaneously succeeds in insulting the Australians, the Irish, and the average intelligence.
I'm sorry, I love that. What a line. I'd have kissed the mirror if I'd written that. I'd have been like, you brilliant son of a gun.
Awesome. Richard Elko of the Washington Post wrote, "The triangle performances are splendid, but the lines and situation the three principals are called upon to face are trite indeed. James Birdie's script from a Helen Simpson novel adapted by Hume Cronyn has little to be proud of, is indeed unintentionally hilarious at time." So that's kind of didn't seem to have a lot of interesting reviews, or it had a lot of interesting reviews on it, not a lot of interest in the film. Now, Harrison's reports printed a mostly positive review praising Bergman for another striking performance and adding, "The story is not without its weak points, particularly in that much of the footage is given more to talk than to movement, but Alfred Hitchcock's directorial skill managed to overcome most of the script's deficiencies by building up situations that thrill and hold the spectator in tense suspense." So there are definitely some people who do like it. In Peter Bogdanovich's interview with Alfred Hitchcock, Bogdanovich mentions that French critics writing for Cahiers de Cinema in the 50s considered Under Capricorn one of Hitchcock's finest films. Now, as for the actors, so it stars Ingrid Bergman, who we did speak about when we covered Spellbound. She was also in Notorious, and this is her final Hitchcock appearance. And we also spoke about Joseph Cotten when we covered Shadow of a Doubt, and this is his final Hitchcock film appearance. But we will see him again in an Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode. Michael Wilding was an English stage, television, and film actor. He's best known for a series of films that he made with Anna Neagle, for the 2 films he made with Hitchcock, and for being Elizabeth Taylor's second husband. Born in Leigh-on-Sea, Essex, England, and educated at Christ's Hospital, Wilding left home at age 17 and trained as a commercial artist. He went to Europe when he was 20, and he supported himself in Europe by doing sketches. He wanted to get into designing sets for films and approached a London film studio in 1933 looking for work. They invited him to come to work as an extra, and Wilding appeared as an extra in British films such as Bittersweet from 1933, Heads We Go from 1933, and Channel Crossing, also from 1933. He caught the acting bug and decided to make it a career, and he reportedly appeared in an Austrian film called Pastoral. He made his stage debut in The Ringer from 1934 for the Waterford Repertory Company, and made his London stage debut in Chase the Ace the following year. He could be spotted in the films Late Extra from 1953, When Nights Were Bold from 1936, and Wedding Group from 1936. He was in 2 musicals on stage, Spread It Abroad and Home and Beauty. And I realized I did make a misread here. It was 1935 for the Late Extra, I think I said 1955. In 1937 and 1938, he toured Australia and New Zealand with Faye Compton's stage company. The plays included Personal Appearance, Victoria Regina, Tonight at 8:30, and George and Margaret. While in Australia, he filmed a prologue for Personal Appearance. He was in Under Capricorn, and we will see him again in Stage Fright, and he will also appear in the Alfred Hitchcock Hour episode, Last Seen Wearing Blue Jeans. And Margaret Leighton was an English actress active on stage and television and in film. Her film appearances included her first credited debut feature in Anatoly de The Winslow Boy from 1948. For The Go-Between in 1971, she won the BAFTA Award for Best Actress in a Supporting Role and was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Leighton began her career on stage in 1938 before joining the Old Vic and making her Broadway debut in 1946. A 4-time Tony Award nominee, she twice won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play for the original Broadway productions of Separate Tables in 1957 and The Night of the Iguana in 1962. She also won an Emmy Award for a 1970 television version of Hamlet. This is her only Hitchcock film appearance, but she will appear in the Alfred Hitchcock Hour episode Where the Woodbine Twineth. Now, for Alfred Hitchcock's cameo, he can be seen in the town square during the parade wearing a blue coat and a brown hat at the beginning of the film, and he is also one of the 3 men on the steps of the government house about 10 minutes later. And I gotta say, I did not see him. I did not notice him when I was watching the film at all. Well, that is my trivia and behind the scenes for the film. Chris, let's jump into our discussion on the film Under Capricorn.
I'm like, let's jump in. And I'm like, I don't know where to
Let's jump in.
I mean...
Okay, so this movie looked fantastic. Okay, so I really liked the look of it. The color in this one I thought was better than the color that we saw in Rope. And again, a lot of the long takes in this one impressed me, and they didn't quite seem as contrived as they were for Rope. And he didn't try and make it so that like the whole film was one take, which I did love about Rope, right? Where he was trying to hide the takes and whatnot. He just decided to play with the art of the long take, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, there was that one scene when he was going through that government house to his cousin, and they go down that long, long hallway and then like through 2 rooms before they get to where his cousin's having a bath. And I'm like, okay, this is really kind of a neat thing to see. And that's kind of when I noticed that there was a bunch of long takes in this. And then I remembered that I had heard that. I think our friend Pat McFadden had told me that there was going to be a bunch of long takes in this movie as well. And I didn't know that because, you know, I don't know much about this film. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it. You know, even the books that I have, like the chapter on Under Capricorn in Donald Spotto's book is only like 4 pages long, and in my 50 Years of Alfred Hitchcock, there's only like 1 paragraph on Under Capricorn. Like, this is just a movie that people just blow over and don't really talk about all that much, and I can see why. Yeah,
unfortunately, I mean, I think it's, you know, technically and it's the weird thing you think about in the way that Hitchcock directed it and the way it was acted, I think it's pretty good. However, its failings really come down to what the actual story is. How is it, as a piece of entertainment, how does it engage the audience? How does it attract people? How does it do all this sort of thing? And I just really think it lets people down. On a visual sense, I think it's great. So you were absolutely right. When they use Technicolor, I think it's beautiful. I actually, because I made notes, the second note was I love the green coat. Because he wears this striking, and the other colour comparison I can think of, in case you've not seen it, is if you've ever seen the film Atonement from 2007, Keira Knightley wears this green dress that is now an iconic piece of fashion, and it's the exact same shade of green. And it's this visual pull, and you are right, I believe it's in the... it's in that long tracking shot through the house and into the bath and all that sort of thing. And I just remember it being so striking. And the way that they use colour, I mean, for me, we'll see it used in much better ways later on. But as only the second colour film that Hitch ever made, I think it's a very interesting choice. And I think it's visually quite appealing. Yeah, so on a technical thing, I think it does work, and you sort of see what it was he was trying to do. But for me, it's the story. It really falls flat. They try to market it as a sort of like a mystery, and it's not. For me, it is more of a melodrama. It focuses on the kind of penal colonies and the history in Australia, which admittedly I don't know a lot about. I will be honest. In the UK, as the country which basically set up the penal colonies and really sent people away to establish a lot of what is modern Australia as criminals, we don't get taught this in high school or in school. We really, a lot of our history is just whitewashed so that we look like the heroes. There's no talk about the effect of the British Empire in terms of subjugation or in terms of what we did in Australia or in any of the Commonwealth countries or that sort of thing. So I don't know a lot, and I wish I'd had time to do a little bit more research. But as much as it's interesting in focusing on the backstory of the colonies and kind of how they affect the characters, it does commit the kind of the ultimate sin in a Hitchcock film, and it's boring. It is a boring film, and it places so much of emphasis on this melodrama and this, what's this mystery? What's the secret behind, what's going on? But it just feels like they've pulled too many separate elements and amped them up to dramatic, and it just doesn't work for me.
So when I was reading the one book here, they called it that this was a part of kind of like his period piece trilogy, which would fall under the categories with Waltzes from Vienna and Jamaica Inn.
Yes.
And I think we all liked Waltzes from Vienna. We didn't love it, but we thought it was good. But I mean, I love Jamaica Inn. I think Jamaica Inn is a fantastic movie. And it's one that a lot of people don't like of Hitchcock's. And I think that a lot of people don't like it because it's not one of his thriller movies. And so, like, at first when we were talking, I was thinking, do we not like this because it's not a thriller? And then I'm like, no, because I love Jamaica Inn, and that's not what people generally consider to be a Hitchcock film.
I was going to say, I remember I was less positive about Jamaica Inn than you and Tom, which is fine. But even I will say I would easily watch Jamaica Inn over this because it actually has an interesting plot. It's got an actual structure, and it's got characters that are well-rounded, and it's got something that it actually wants to say, and there's great sequences. This is... It's basically a sort of a domestic's kitchen sink drama, but it just happens to be in colonies, and it happens to be with what is, quite high-class people in 1800s Australia.
Yeah, and it's weird because they're high-class people, but to me, like, they're not, because of the way that, like, their servants are treating them and talking and laughing about them, and it's like they've got this facade of being an upper-class person. And, the premise of the movie is that once you go down there and you've served your time, people don't ask you about your past because you've served your time. And everybody has the ability to become rich and famous just the same as everybody else, no matter what you've done in the past. And unless you are convicted of another crime, your criminal history is gone, pretty much. And I don't know, like, that just doesn't hold enough interest in the story. And I think that's the problem, because we've really got like a stellar cast here with Ingrid Bergman and Joseph Cotton. Like, those are two really outstanding actors, and I think they both did a very good job in the movie. Like, Joseph Cotton is like, there's times when you like him and there's times when you don't like him in this movie, and I think that's a really interesting balance for him to be able to play. And I really like Joseph Cotton as an actor. I think he's really great. And Ingrid Bergman is one of the classics as well. And her being a drunk and trying to hide it, and it's not, once you find out it's not really her fault because she's being slowly poisoned by this maid and whatnot, you know, it's really interesting because it adds depth and layer. Because, I mean, that shrunken head that you get at the beginning of the film is just a throwaway, right? And then it just comes back at the end in the climax, and you're just like, oh, they've been doing voodoo on her and whatnot. And it's like, you know, it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But I also kind of think that's an interesting twist that came out of nowhere.
It's interesting, but I mean, the character of Millie, I think, is quite... I would have been interested to see a bit more about her, because she's unfortunately, kind of from when we first introduced to her in the household, you kind of get this idea that she's a bit of a knockoff Mrs. Danvers, in the sense that she's quite an intense housekeeper. She's in love with the owner of the house. I mean, in Rebecca's case, it's Rebecca. In this case, I've forgotten his name, but I know exactly who you mean. It's the governor.
Joseph Cotton?
Joseph Cotton. I'll just say Joseph Cotton. I'll try to remember the character name. Do not remember it. Well, she's in love with him, and so...
I thought a lot about Rebecca, too, yeah.
It's similar energy in a way, but it really reminded me of... There's a book by Eleanor Caton called The Luminaries, and it was, I think it won the Man Booker Prize a few years ago. I will be honest, I read 50 pages and I just gave up. It's and I read a lot. I really tried, and I just could not do it. But it's all about crimes in Australia, and how moving to a certain place can your sins follow you and your past follows you and that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's a similar kind of vibe, but I wish in a way they'd made Australia more of a important character, because there's story to be told, and kind of like, oh, okay, so if you move to another place that is literally, you are building a society and it's really in its infancy, can you kind of absolve yourself of your sins, you know, in a way that Henrietta is unable to. And it's played up, and it just doesn't strike true for me. It's a shame, because Ingrid Bergman she's an iconic actress. I don't think... I mean, she'll have put in lesser performances, but even in this, she's entertaining, and her character really is the linchpin throughout. And one thing I did actually appreciate, and this is a nod to the costume design and all that kind of stuff, I really enjoyed the way that they visually showed her regaining her self-confidence and kind of becoming herself. So she starts off and she's barefoot and she's messy and her hair's a mess and she just looks tired and all that sort of thing. And as she and I want to say Charles, the cousin, starts to build her self-confidence back and, you know, help her regain herself, you get to see it visually. And that's something I always appreciate in films, is the idea of using costume and using fashion and hair and even makeup in some things to really reflect what a character is going through and as an indicator to their status. So I really did enjoy that, because they could have just had her looking fine and then Ingrid Bergman just being miserable, and I really appreciated it was a sign of her kind of decay. And it's interesting because this almost combined two of Bergman's past roles, because I believe, if I'm right, she was in Gaslight, 1940s. Yes. So it was basically part of it is the plot of Gaslight, except it's not a husband trying to do it; it's just the maid. And it also combined Casablanca. And also, the idea of a love triangle. She doesn't commit to her kind of former friend or companion, that sort of thing. But instead, she decides to remain with her husband, and it's just it was interesting in that sense. But this felt kind of like the weaker of both, like a sort of Venn diagram of plot points that had been pulled and gone, oh, okay, well, she's done this, so let's do this, and she's done that, so we'll bring people in with this. But it just really didn't make... There was no mystery to unravel, or there was, but it didn't pay off, which is the worst thing you can do in a mystery, is have the actual... When it's all revealed, and it's like, haha, here's what it's all been about. It doesn't do it for me, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really unfortunate because, again, I mean, like, there's so many things that are in this movie that should make it like a knockout of the park.
Yeah.
Like, this should be a home run, and it just falls. And I think it boils down to just the story, and it's just not interesting. And I mean, for this to have been based off of a novel, which is based off of a play, like, I don't know, would I have liked this better as a play? I don't know, because it's still a pretty boring story. So. It's tough. Like, Rope was a really good translation, and it worked on the screen, and I'm sure it would have worked well on the stage.
Yeah.
Because he basically filmed it as if it was on a stage. And while he tried to do some cool long shots here, he still played with it as if it was a movie. But yeah, I don't even know. Like, beyond the good performances, like, it's lesser than the sum of its parts,
yes.
which is so weird to say.
Yes,
it's just so weird to say that.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, like you said, it should. If you were to add all this together, you would think, oh, this is going to be great. There's a mystery, there's a heroine, there's an exotic location, there's kind of all this going on, but it just doesn't work. And I think it's because it just, for whatever reason, they just either don't push it enough, or they lean too far into sort of the melodrama of it. I know we say, oh, well, Hitchcock, he doesn't just do thrillers and that sort of thing. And you're right, he absolutely doesn't. But that is his kind of his wheelhouse.
His wheelhouse.
Yeah, exactly. It's you look at any director, if they take a step outside, it's not to say it's not a bold choice and that they can't do it, but some of them are, quite weak. You look at Wes Craven, and he was a master at horror and thriller and everything. Now, could he have directed a rom-com? Maybe. I would have been really interested to see what he would have done with a rom-com, but I just really wish.
I don't know, because I don't like Hitchcock's funny stuff. Like, we're coming up on The Trouble with Harry, and I've seen that once, and oh boy, I did not like that when I saw it. So
I'm honestly trying to think which ones.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, we hated Mr. and Mrs. Smith, didn't we?
We had Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We didn't like that
one.
That
so. Awful one with with the couple who hated each other. What the hell was that called?
Was that Sabotage?
No, Sabotage was the
Saboteur.
Oh God, I don't even know anymore. How bad's that? I'm like, we've gone through
the one with the Statue of Liberty.
No, I didn't mind that. It was
No.
it.
Well, it must have been Mr. and Mrs. Smith then, where they were locked in the room because they were fighting and stuff like that.
Rich and Strange.
Rich and Strange. I didn't mind Rich and Strange. I don't know. Maybe but it wasn't great. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't like Rich and Strange. But no, but it is a shame in the. Yeah, it should work. I think if this was done by, I don't know, maybe not even a different director, but if it was just kind of punched up, or if it's something, it's just missing something. It just doesn't quite gel, and it's a shame because visually it's great. I appreciate stuff like the costume design. I appreciate the actors and the performances. I think there's a lot of really good material. I mean, I'm going through my notes here. And it's interesting. I was talking about Australia as a character and how it changed. So originally in the penal colonies, it was a punishment, and then Australia became increasingly, and to this day, it's a place to escape. So there's Emma Donoghue's book, The Wonder, which is fantastic, and it's set in Ireland, and it has a real history of kind of Australia and all that sort of thing, and that's really interesting as well. It's almost like a character study, but it doesn't know what to do. Because you would think, well, if they're going to focus on Henrietta and make it a study about, oh, okay, well, here's what's going on with her, and here's, how she's going to move back and forth and that sort of thing, or develop or change or grow or forgive herself. And, there's a brilliant bit on the Wikipedia page, because I was just really curious and I wanted to see what they said. And there's, apparently, I did not catch this, there's a running motif of Mary Magdalene throughout the film, and according to, and this is in Style and Meaning: Studies in the Detailed Analysis of Film, Ed Gallifan, and this is the idea that the film is about guilt and shame, says the inscription on the Flusky's mansion, Minyago Ugilla, means "Why weepest thou?" St. Mary Magdalene, the patron saint of penitent sinners in religious iconography, the bare feet, skull, the flail, the looking glass in which the beholder's face is not always reflected, the jewels cast down to floor. All of these images are in the film. Sources for the imagery that Hitchcock might have had in mind are the paintings St. Mary Magdalene with a candle and St. Mary Magdalene with a mirror, both by Georges de la Tour. And it's the idea that she is the penitent sinner. She is this archetype of, oh, I have made this horrible thing, and I'm just going to spoil it. She basically shot her brother while eloping to Gretna Green. Which do you guys in Canada know what Gretna Green is? Or
I haven't heard of that. No.
Oh, cool. Okay, this is a little bit of British history. So, Gretna Green is the place traditionally in the British Isles where you go if you're a young couple and you want to elope, because they will, I believe, historically, they will marry you without your parents' permission if you're underage.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're gonna, because they were quite young, so yeah, they say, oh, elope to Gretna Green. It's the one place where you don't need your parents' permission to get married, or at least that was the case. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So the whole Mary Magdalene thing, did not catch that at all. Wasn't even looking for it.
No.
But I mean, I don't know whether or not they're trying to add layers that aren't there, or if it's uncovering something that was pretty well hidden. Because even the inscription which says "Why we weepest thou," which that Minyago Ugilla, it isn't in a real language. And the quote is from the Gospel of St. John, apparently. So there's no doubt there'll be people digging more layers into this and finding out more information. But I don't mind the idea that it's actually a character study of guilt and shame, and it's all about Henrietta coming to terms with what she did. But again, that sounds really interesting. The film isn't.
Okay.
I would have loved it if it focused on that and been more of a... almost like we covered it a couple of episodes ago. What the hell's its name? The Paradine Case, which itself is a kind of a study of obsession and culpability, and we'll see it again in I Confess as an interesting motif. So if that had been the whole thing with Under Capricorn, I think I would have enjoyed this more. But it was sort of a mystery that I didn't really know what it wanted to say about anything.
Yeah. Excellent, right on. Well, I don't have much more to add. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to address?
I don't think. I mean, I'm literally going through my little Word document thing. I mean, at one stage I did say Millie equals total cow, so that was that, because I was like, that's quite evil. Good for you. And then, oh yeah, literally the last thing I wrote was, I wish the title was a Zodiac-styled serial killer movie. Which, to be fair, I would write in a heartbeat. If I said, right, here's a bunch of money, write a film, I'd be like, great. I'm basically going to write a film either called Under Capricorn or Capricorn Rising, which is about someone who is an anonymous horoscope writer who starts killing people off. And I would love that. It's a shame, it's a really good time.
You read our horoscope, Capricorn, you're dead today.
Well, it would be like, Gemini, watch out for that two faces. One of them might get cut. I've been watching Seven. Again, we're recording this in October. I always make a concerted effort to watch as much horror as I can. So yeah,
love it. Excellent.
But no,
well, Chris, how many shrunken heads would you rate this film out of 5?
I would. Okay, if I'm being generous, because there's a lot of elements I did like about this, I would say a 3 shrunken heads.
Man, I'm giving this thing a 2.
Yeah, I really do like it. I really like the fashion. I do think it's quite cool, and I do like it's the progression of how she starts off like absolutely like messed up, and then finds herself, and it's told visually. So that is the whole point in itself. Otherwise, yeah, I'd be giving it 2 stars. It's basically like a 2.5, half a shrunken head.
So you round it up. Round it up.
Yeah.
Excellent, right on. Well, our good friend Tom, who is not here today, you can find him on Twitter at TomCaldwell3000, and he's available on Instagram at @TheTomCaldwell. Chris, where can people find you when you're not trying to put poison in my drink?
Well, it's too late for that. He says sipping. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Haigh_boy, where at the moment I am just... Oh God, I'm just coping. I'm just coping at the moment. But yeah, you can find me there. Come, say hi. Tell me why I'm wrong about Under Capricorn. It's totally fine. Apart from this, I'm also on a podcast which is still on hiatus called North by Northwest, which is me and one of my best buddies, Emma Platt, and we talk about pop culture and all stuff kind of going on. We keep saying we're wanting to do new episodes. There's 12 you can listen to. They're a lot of fun. Check those out, and then I'm friends with a lot of people who do other great podcasts. So yeah, check those out as well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, right on. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. You can find me on the United Federation of Podcast Network with 2 shows. One's called Infinite Diversity, which is all about new Star Trek, and one called Franchise Fatigue, which I host with my friend Zach, and we cover movies, remakes, and sequels. And we have wrapped up the majority of our David Fincher podcast, which is called House of Fincher. We're just waiting for the release of Mank, which is supposed to be coming in December, but we have started recording our next series, which is House of Nolan, and that will release once we have released our episode on Mank. Thank you so much to the Fandom Podcast Network for hosting our show. You can find us in their feed as well as in our own independent feed. Thank you so much to Jason Cullimore for our wonderful theme music. We love it. It's fantastic. Also, be sure to check out our friends Annie and Catherine and their show Good Evening and Alfred Hitchcock Presents podcast. There they go through all of the episodes of that show in a non-linear order. So with their show and our show combined, you get a near comprehensive look at the Grand Master's work. Until next time, when we cover Stage Fright, good evening.
Good evening.